What is up, guys? My name is Mason Steele, and welcome to my first Kobolds and Catacombs set review. Today is the 25th of November, so it's going to include all the cards revealed up to this point. And I'm going to start with the lowest casting cost all the way up to the highest. And there's going to be two rating systems. One is sort of a power level rating system, and the other is going to be just a design rating system, where it's how creative it is and sort of how well they costed the power and toughness or the mana cost. So even if it's really cool, it will take a design hit, not costed correctly. Alright, so let's start up here. Feral Gibber-er. Okay, interesting. 1 mana, 1/1. This guy's pretty good exactly on turn 1, but other than that, I think it's a 0-star power level. It's just going to make your deck worse having a 1 mana, 1/1 in general than just having any other random card from your class. So, not a very good card. There are going to be a lot of stories with this card, especially because of Devolve. You're kind of likely to get this through other means, right? Through a devolve or something like that. So, very cool card. The design is cool, but it's kind of a hard card to design because you can't make this too strong or it just becomes super annoying, right? If it's a 1/2, then all of a sudden it's crazy, right? Or kind of crazy. Could be crazy. Alright, next up we have Arcane Artificer. This is a newly released Mage card. 1 mana, 1/2 Elemental, so it's got that Elemental tag. Nice to see them continuing the Elemental support. This is very similar to Earthen Scale, so at the very least it will be a role player card. And this is kind of in preparation of Mage losing Ice Block. Blizzard has pretty much confirmed at this point that Ice Block will be moving to Wild, kind of getting rotated out of the standard environment. So Mage is going to need a way to sort of heal life because they can't cheat anymore with those Ice Blocks. So yeah, definitely a role player card. Definitely will pop up in lists in the future. Moving on, we have a 1 mana spell here. Lesser Jasper Spellstone, the first of the Spellstones. I have a cheat sheet here that's going to show me all the Spellstones. Let me pull that up real quick. Alright, so the casting cost of these Spellstones will stay the same throughout the sort of metamorphosis of it. It's always going to be 1 mana here. Deal 2 damage to a minion, so already a Holy Smite or a Arcane Shot. So already kind of good enough, right? It passes sort of the vanilla test. These kind of cards do see play. Even just the Holy Smite sees play. Now in Druid, they were used to having Living Roots, which is a way more versatile card, especially going wide and buffing your creatures. But at the very least, this is sort of playable, right? So when you gain 3 armor, you get to the next step here. Deal 4 damage to a minion for 1. Now that's super strong. That would definitely see play, but is it worth putting the armor gain in your deck to sort of unlock this thing that you might want to cast in the early turns anyway? It's hard to judge. I think at the very least this card is a role player because it's so cheap and because it's so efficient killing creatures. And then of course here Jasper, Greater Jasper Spellstone, deal 6 damage to a minion for 1. Again, very powerful. But interesting to note, it's not that much better than the second upgrade, right? The second upgrade kills a wide variety of things, whereas doing 6 damage to something might not be necessary in a lot of situations, but it is better. So I think very hard card to judge, but because of the existence of Malfurion, I think alone kind of gives you easy ways to upgrade this in the late game. So I think it's definitely a role player card. It's very hard to tell with Druid because they have so many strong things going on, so many archetypes that are very powerful. Sort of a random kind of removal when they have things like Swipe might not make the cut, right? Things like Feral Rage as well. Next card we have Raven Familiar, this 2 mana 2/2 Mage Beast card. It says Battlecry, reveal a spell in each deck. If yours costs more, you draw it. So it's kind of like the King's Elect effect, kind of like the Joust effect with spells. Now you can absolutely craft your deck to only have high cost spells, in which case you'd probably win this every time. Now is that worth doing? It could be. If you design your deck to only have Firelands Portals or something like that, maybe it's very strong. I think the Beast tag is what ultimately saves this card from irrelevance, because you can sort of slot it in as a curator target. I think that helps it out a little bit, right? Moving on, we got Dry Glutch Jailer, 2 mana 1/1 Death Rattle. Add 3 Silverhand recruits to your hand. This guy's really cool. I think this is going to see a lot of play. A lot of people are down on this card, but to me it just says value, right? Like these Silverhand recruits are going to be 1 mana 1/1, so when this thing dies, you're going to be able to fill your curve throughout the whole game, right? Anytime you spend all your mana in a turn in Hearthstone, you're usually doing something really good. So, you know, 1/1s for 1 aren't relevant, but when they're free, they're absolutely relevant. And as anyone knows right now, you have to kill 1/1s because of Bone Mare, because of things like Spike Ridge Steeds. This is just really annoying, and they are recruits, so they take all the recruit synergy. They also take hand buff synergies, so stuff like Mountain Giant and Twilight Drake. Now this thing does have to die, and that's the one downside to it. You have to kind of get that death rattle, so it is very weak to Potion of Madness. So maybe that existence and the existence of Priest and Dragon Priest coming up here are going to doom this card. But I think discounting the potion, the potion stuff, it's a very powerful card. I think this will see a lot of play, and I'm definitely going to be playing it myself. Wandering Monster. Here we go. Here we got a new secret card from Hunter. When an enemy attacks your hero, summon a 3-cost minion as the new target. It's kind of a ceiling on this card, right? It's kind of going to do what it does, whereas stuff like Freezing Trap can be very powerful if you hit a 6-drop or something. Your opponent is forced to sort of test for it. So, and Explosive has a high ceiling too, where this kind of just does what it does. But like Bear Trap, which is no longer with us, I think it's because what it does is so consistent. It will see play, at least in decks that want a lot of secrets, and it remains to be seen if that's something that Hunter wants to do. I think it might see play just because Blizzard is pushing sort of a low beast count Hunter deck, right? We're going to see cards that really want you to play very few beasts and very big beasts, so this kind of thing might see play. Alright, we're moving on to another secret here, Sudden Betrayal. This rogue secret, when a minion attacks your hero, instead it attacks one of its neighbors. So this is kind of like a fixed misdirection. Misdirection had the unfortunate thing where it could attack your opponent for face damage. Not really what you want to be doing. You'd much rather be controlling the board. So it's interesting that this will sort of lay in wait until your opponent has 2 creatures. It's hard to test for it, right? Because if it's not like Explosive or something, or Misdirection where you test it for it easy. You have to actually have 2 creatures on board for you to test this, and you're kind of forced into a situation where you gotta either not attack or you're gonna have to take the damage. Now, obviously, you're the one in control of it. Like, you can attack with your 1/1, so your 1/1 dies, but your other creature lives. But a very cool card. It does cost 2, and that is important for Rogue because Rogues right now are playing the Prince Kelly Seth, and in this set coming up, there's a lot of Prince Kelly Seth sort of combo wombos going on. So I think that fact alone is going to sort of keep the Rogue secrets out of the meta. But the strength of the card is decent. Yeah, it's pretty good for 2. Now it remains to be seen if Rogue are going to get sort of the Cloaked Huntress type cards that really push you in the secret direction, right? Stuff like Eaglehorn Bow really push you in a direction to play secrets. We haven't seen that yet in a Rogue, and if they don't ever get anything, they kind of just have these random 2-mana spells. Yeah, I don't like the future, at least temporarily, for the Rogue secret. Lesser Ruby Spellstone. Add 1 random mage spell to your hand, and if you play 2 elementals, you get the upgraded one. So let's take a look at the upgraded one. I got my cheat sheet pulled up here. So at the next step, you got add 2 mage spells. The next step, you got add 3 mage spells. Well, to get 3 mage spells, you're gonna have to play 4 elementals. That seems like a lot, but actually it's not that hard because of the existence of exactly Firefly, right? So Firefly basically upgrades this card each time you have it. Playing an Elemental Mage deck, I think this card does replace the Kabbalah's Tomb if you wanted a Kabbalah's Tomb in the first place. So because it costs 2, the opportunity cost to play this is very, very low. So it's not like Kabbalah's Tomb where you kind of have to sack your whole turn to play it. So I think this is good in exactly an elemental deck, right? So yeah, very cool card. Moving on, we have Lesser Pearl Stone. Summon a 2/2 spirit with taunt, and then when you gain 3 health, it goes to the next step, which is going to be a 4/4 taunt, and then the last step is a 6/6 taunt, all for 2 mana. Now that's good. The problem holding this card back is a couple things. The first step of it is not good. The 2 mana 2/2 taunt on turn 2 is not great. It's almost just like hero powering, so it's not much better than just hero powering on turn 2. That's pretty bad actually. So that's what holds it back. The second thing that holds it back is you have to have it in your hand when you gain the health, and you can't gain health if you're at full health. So a lot of cards in the early game will gain health, but if you're at full already, and you won't actually upgrade this thing. So it's kind of a strange card, right? 2 mana 6/6 taunt is powerful. Nice little tempo swing. I don't think it's worth a card slot in your deck. I could be wrong on this. This could be 2 of in control lists, I guess, but I think it's gonna be in decks in spite of itself. I don't think you want to sort of design a deck around this card at all. Another Rogue secret, Cheat Death. When a friendly minion dies, return your hand, it costs 2 less. Now this could be very powerful, but it's very easy to play around, right? So it has the duplicate and the effigy problem. You kind of can't play cheap creatures, or you could. Maybe stuff like Swashbuckler give you enough value to play this. But yeah, I think it'd be good with exactly Prince Kelly Seth, but you can't play with Prince because it costs 2 like the other Rogue secret. So Yeah, I don't see this seeing any play. It is cool though, but it has sort of the classic problem with a secret where your opponent controls what's going on. You can't activate this on your turn, and Rogue already have access to this kind of effect quite a bit, right? And there's even more of them coming up here. Actually, the next two cards kind of do the same thing here. So moving on, Zola the Gorgon, Battlecry, choose a friendly minion. This is a neutral one. Choose a friendly minion, add a golden copy of it to your hand. So the biggest thing here is the turn 2 Prince Khaliseth, turn 3 Zola the Gorgon, sort of go off with double singleton cards and to make your opponent very frustrated that they got so lucky. So that interaction alone makes this very playable. I think the other interaction alone that makes this very playable is the Kazakus interaction. You could see in Wild, people would just play Bran Bronzebeard basically just for Kazakus. Yeah, sometimes they would get some dragon buffs and stuff like that. Maybe an extra mind control tech once in a while, but mainly Bran Bronzebeard was played just for the interaction with Kazakus, and this does the same thing, and in fact for the same cost. Now the body is not as good, which is very relevant. Bran was sort of a resilient little guy for 3 mana, whereas this is not. This is also not as good as Bran, because Bran you can just sort of play on turn 3 sometimes and pose a threat, whereas this thing actually needs to hit something to get the value, and it's also not a threat at all at a 2/2. But because of the interaction with Prince Khaliseth, because of the interaction with Kazakus, I think this does see quite a bit of play. Alright, moving on here, and very similar card, Sonya Shadow Dancer, this rogue card, another 3 mana 2/2. After a friendly minion dies, add a 1/1 copy to your hand. It costs 1. Whoa. So in the early game, the target you're looking for again is that Prince Khaliseth, and once again, between this and Zola, you kind of get some redundancy, which is very scary, and it's going to be very tilting with the Prince. So at least, yeah. And in the late game, this thing can really go off, and it's kind of mind-boggling how crazy this thing can go off if you have stuff like Valspine Slayers and stuff like SI Agents. Get them all killed and they all cost 1. Stuff like Bone Mares too. It's kind of ridiculous how crazy value this can get in the late game. So very, very playable card. This is kind of a must craft in Rogue for the foreseeable future. Rummaging Kobold. Return one of your destroyed weapons to your hand for 3. You get a 1/3. Not great. I think this is not much to say here. The design isn't too interesting, and the design gets a failure because of the stats being so bad too. Like a 1/3. Like, come on, man, make it a 3/3. Why not? Maybe they were scared of this with something. I don't know. Seems really bad though. Alright, Lone Champion is a cool design card, much like the Tar Creeper here. Battlecry, if you control no other minions, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. So it's sort of like a defensive card that doesn't get just slotted into aggro because you have to meet these conditions. I do think because the conditions are kind of steep that it is worse than Tar Creeper. Tar Creeper does get played in aggro decks, even though it's sort of designed to be anti-aggro. And this guy wants you to play no creatures on turn 1 and 2, and then you get a nice little bonus. So yeah, it is good. It's not great. It's no Tar Creeper, right? But it is very playable. Now a lot of classes have sort of minions on turn 2. If you're playing Paladin or Shaman, even in control, you're a lot of times you're just going to play a hero power on turn 2, where this guy kind of blocks you or disincentivizes you to do that. So a lot of things wrong with it. A lot of things are fine with it. It is playable, but it's no Tar Creeper. I think people need to settle down over the fact that it's the new Tar Creeper. Benevolent Jinn is the 3 mana 2/4 elemental, and it has both an end of turn effect and a heal that activates the Lesser Pearlstone. So that's cool. The problem, I think, obviously, is if you don't get health, you can't get above 30. So you play this on turn 3 when you're full, it doesn't actually activate your Spellstone. Now that's kind of an issue. In the late game, kind of interesting if you have sort of end of turn doublers like Jakari Enchanter. So I think if you're specifically playing an elemental end of turn deck, which I have made a video about in the past, then I think this guy fits right in. But other than that, I don't think it sort of makes the cut in Paladin. Paladin have very strong sort of cards going on like Peacekeeper. A lot of powerful taunts running around like Tar Creeper right now. So I think the 3-drop spot, especially because the Tar Creeper is very hard to sort of break through. And I don't think this does enough, unless you exactly want an elemental and you want some end of turn shenanigans. Unidentified Elixir here. Give a minion +2/+2. Gain a bonus effect in your hand. So I have my cheat sheet pulled up. We'll take a look at all these here. So is 3 mana 2/2 attack and health good on its own? It's close, right? It's no balance chosen, but any sort of buff in Priest is very strong. And you could tell by the way they sort of priced the Tentacles card, right? They're kind of scared of that card, so they made it cost quite a bit, right? So let's see here. Elixir of Hope Give a minion +2/+2 and death rattle return to your hand. Okay, now that's obviously pretty damn good. Give a minion +2/+2 and lifesteal in the certain situations. That's very good too. I don't think it's as valuable as the death rattle, but pretty good in the right situation. Give a minion +2/+2 and divine shield. Now we're talking. Now we're talking about 2-for-1s, right? Elixir of Shadows. Give a minion +2/+2. Summon a 1/1 copy of it. And again, in the right situation, this is pretty crazy if you have some powerful death rattles. I think on pure power level, the Elixir of Purity is the best one in a vacuum. And sort of the biggest upside is the Elixir of Shadows by quite a bit, right? Will this card see play? Well, I think the existence of Radiant Elemental almost guarantees this card sees play because of how powerful it is to coin out our Elemental, and then on turn 2, play this on an attacking body, right? You have a 4 or 5 attacker with maybe lifesteal or divine shield or, you know, death rattle, or it makes a 1/1. That's kind of crazy, right? You go turn 1 coin Elemental. Turn 2, Elixir of Shadows on this. You get another element, and all of a sudden your 2 mana spells cost 0. Whoa! So that means free Shadow Visions. It means free Divine Spirit, Inner Fire stuff. So pretty crazy. 1 mana Thought Steal. Yeah, you can really go off with the Radiant Elemental. So that's the key to this card. I think seeing a lot of play. Moving on here, we have a Mage Secret, Exploding Runes. After your opponent plays a minion, deal 6 damage to it and any excess to their hero. Well, Mage do like face damage, right? They can always use extra face damage because of the fireballs and the Firelance portals and the pyroblasts and all that stuff can go face. So yeah, this seems pretty good as a sort of a removal card. You play this on turn 3, or you cheat it out with a Kirator Mage. They play a creature. The creature dies pretty easily, and then any excess damage gets done to the face. It's almost like a 2-for-1. If your deck wants face damage, this is kind of like a 2-for-1, right? They play a 3/3, they take 3, which is kind of like a card, and their creature dies, which of course is a card. So it is a 2-for-1 in that sense. When face damage is important to your deck, this card is quite strong. So it will see play. This is quite good in a tempo. Unidentified Maul. This is the paladin weapon here, 3 mana 2/2. Now that alone is not very good, but the effects that this thing does are crazy. Battlecry, give your minions divine shield. Whoa, that can be super crazy. Even on turn 3, if you get sort of a start with a bunch of recruits. Battlecry, give your minions taunt. Now this is the worst one by a lot, right? I don't think you're ever gonna want this unless you specifically are about to die. Battlecry, summon 2 1/1 Silverhand recruits. I think this is the best one in a vacuum because it's so close to Muster for Battle that I think this is the best one in a vacuum, especially on turn 3. Battlecry, give your minions +1 attack. So this one's okay. I think what saves this card is that 2 of the 4 are really good with eggs, right? Both the taunt and give your minions attack work very well with eggs. So that kind of leads me to believe this will see at least some play in egg decks. The Purifier Maul and the Champion's Maul are kind of crazy in the right situation, but maybe not starting on turn 3. So that's what kind of holds the power level of the card back. If you knew every time that you could get Champion's Maul, the card would be really good. That's very close to Muster for Battle. Muster for Battle is still much better, but even half a Muster for Battle for 3 mana is very powerful. Coming up next, we have the first legendary weapon. This 3 mana weapon, Dragon Soul, is a priest. After you play 3 spells in a turn, summon a 3/3 dragon. So a little bit of work, in fact a lot of work to get this going. Is it worth it to play 3 spells and get a 5/5? Well, you have to build your deck around it, and the problem is building your deck around a single card might be an issue, right? If all you have in your deck are these sort of cheap cantrip kind of death rattle-y oracle like loot hoarder kind of things, just to make sure you always have cards to play to get your dragons going, is that worth building your whole deck around a one of? Maybe not, right? Maybe not. And if you can, and the powerful thing to do in Priest right now, obviously, is the Raza Anduin combo. And if you cast a bunch of spells, I don't think you want dragons. At that point, all you want to do is kill your opponent with the face damage, right? So, kind of an issue with this card in that sense. On 3 mana, it doesn't affect the board at all. On 4 mana, can you activate it? Well, you would sort of need 2 1-drops and a 2-drop. The problem here is that, well, if you have 2 1-drops and a 2-drop, what did you do on turns 1 and 2? You didn't play anything. So, a lot of issues with this card holding it back. I don't think it's good. It can be good, but it's a one of, and so that's the problem. I think you give up too much between your deck and how you play to sort of get the effect right. Now you can think back to Prince Khaliseth, how it was underrated. I think it's different because with Prince Khaliseth, all you had to do was skip your turn 2. You didn't really have to change your deck too much around it. Whereas this, it really wants you to play a lot of cheap things, and then hold your cheap things until turn 3, and then hope you get the Dragon Soul on turn 3 as well. So a lot of things wrong with the card, and there's going to be weapon removal out there. So you might base your whole deck around this one card, and they remove it, and then you're like, shit, oh well, no more Dragon Dream. But it is cool. I don't know if I'm going to ever craft this card, but if I open it up, I'll definitely try it out. Moving on, we have a Kobold Illusionist, 4-mana 3/3 Kobold here. Very much like a Barnes kind of card. Death Rattle, summon a copy of a minion from your hand. So the stats aren't as good as Barnes. Barnes was a 3/4 that summoned a 1/1 immediately. So it almost passed the neutral test. In fact, it did pass the neutral test just by itself. This guy, 4-mana 3/3, much worse, and you only get the 1/1 after it dies. Now the Death Rattle is much more controllable because you can sort of sculpt your hand when you play this guy to always get the powerful effect. I think your opponent has more control over the 1/1 because they can choose to break the guy on their turn, and they can deal with the 1/1 on their turn. Whereas with Barnes, the 1/1 will come out immediately, and maybe it has an end of turn effect like Ysera or Lich King, or in Wild, powerful Ragnarok. So yeah, this card is good enough because Barnes is good enough, but it's not quite as good as Barnes, so it is a role player card. It is pretty good. So moving on here, Dustbreaker. When this card was revealed, Kibler was on the stream there with the Blizzard employee, and he kind of couldn't believe how strong this card was. Like, he kind of was thinking to himself, you can kind of see in his face, like, are you serious with this card? So yeah, what does it do? Well, Battlecry, if you're holding a dragon, deal 3 minions to all other minions. So it's basically Hellfire that just gives you a 3/3. It's also a dragon. So all you need is Nether Spite Historian in this guy, and you have both your Historian activated and your Dustbreaker activated. It really is kind of silly that they made this a dragon itself. It really is kind of silly that it's so big and it's so cheap. Like, everything is just super pushed on this card. It's kind of ridiculous. It's gonna warp the format. I don't see how this doesn't warp the format. You really have to be thinking on turns 1 through 3 against Priest right now. Is it really worth it for me to go all in and play 3 creatures just to have them all die, and for me to immediately lose the board and board control, right? And that's the thing with Hellfire. You would keep board control. Yeah, they would get a 3-for-1 or whatever on you, but when it was your turn, you'd play a creature. Whereas this, they get the board control back, right? And this leads right into the Secret Operative and Dragonfire Potion on turn 6, which kill your board again and leave their board behind. So yeah, this is so strong that I think Raza decks are also going to find room to touch dragons to include this as another board clear. It's just too good. It's just too good. It's not much to say here. It's a 5-star. You have to think about this card. You have to play this card. It's just really good. Moving on to another card I think is pushed a little bit too much. Branching Path, this epic card. Choose twice, draw a card, give him minions +1 attack or 6 armor. Now, you're likely never going to sort of split these effects up. You could, but it's likely you're going to double up on draws, you're going to double up on attack, or double up on armor. Because if one of them is good, or what you need, you might as well just get the good thing twice, right? So it is interesting to note this is another Savage Roar for 1 more mana, but it's not until end of turn. It doesn't affect your hero, but it stays on there. So stuff like Spreading Plague, it just becomes really powerful with, right? You can, even on turn 10, you can Spreading Plague plus Branching Paths, and you have a bunch of 3 6s or 3 5s. Much better than 1 5s, right? If you need armor, then you might as well gain 12 armor. So it's just super versatile. I think this is going to be a 2-of in pretty much all the Druid decks. And at the worst case scenario, you sort of use it like a Nourish, right? Twig of the World Tree, Death Rattle, gain 10 mana crystals. Kind of crazy card because it says gain. They're not going to be empty. They're going to be full. So this is one of the cards you hope your opponent uses removal on somehow. A couple things you can do here. You can go turn 4 Twig, turn 5 Blingtron in Wild. Sort of ramp yourself up all the way. The other thing you can do with this is just start whittling it down, and then on turn 10 or so, you sort of go off, right? You can have a 30 mana turn with this and Coon. So you can do some crazy things. So it's a very cool card. It's definitely a card that doesn't just fit into every Druid deck, so if anyone was worried that the legendary weapons were sort of going to just be a auto craft, auto include in every deck, kind of like the Death Knights almost were, you don't have to worry about that. But the downside is that you really have to build your decks around these sort of legendary weapons for them to be good. Yeah, cool card, cool design. Will it see play? I have my reservations. Druid is one of the classes that can sort of get away with suboptimal things because they can just fall back on Spreading Plague. Like if a Druid, ramps up to turn, they ramp up with Wild Growth on turn 4, they can play this without losing too much because they can just fall back on Spreading Plague. So I wouldn't be surprised if this makes decks, but it's not the reason why the deck is good, and it's never going to be a reason why the deck is good, right? It just might work because of Druid being so strong. So yeah, not too exciting. Moving on here, we kind of have an arena card. This recruit mechanic here basically pulls random creatures from your deck. So it says Battlecry, recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. So it could be a 1-drop, could be a 2-drop, could be a 3-drop, could be a 4-drop, and that's what holds us back in Constructed. If you only have 4-drop minions in your deck, is it even worth doing that? Because all you really get is a 1-mana 2/4, right? If the Guild Recruiter was bigger, then you'd have a reason to warp your deck around it. But because it's just a 2/4, I don't think you would ever play this in Constructed, even if you warp your deck around it. Moving on here, we have one of the most the early reveal cards, Carnivorous Cube. This is one of the most hyped cards, and for good reason. It sort of passes the vanilla test by itself. 5 mana 4/6 is very good stats right now against Priest. Battlecry, destroy a friendly minion. Death Rattle, summon 2 copies of it. So the combo potential with this card is absolutely crazy, right? Because this passes the vanilla test, and because this sort of can go off crazy, I think this is not a meme status card. This is a legit card in the metagame moving forward, and you might have to start packing those silences in 2018. This card's Arcane Tyrant, 5 mana 4/4, costs 0 if you cast a spell that costs 5 or more. And I think the existence of Kabbalah's Tomb makes this card really good and really scary. In fact, Kabbalah's Tomb is one of those sort of unfair cards that had a big downside. You had to pay 5 mana, basically waste your turn to get the value. Whereas with this, if you combine them both, all of a sudden you keep the tempo going to a certain extent, right? You're playing a 4/4, not exactly great on turn 5, but not terrible, and you get 3 random spells, right? So I think this is going to see a lot of play with exactly Kabbalah's Tome. It's just going to work with a lot of other spells like Flame Strike, Blizzard, Meteor. So it's definitely going to see play because Mage does not have any shortage of 5 or more casting cost spells, and because of how sort of well it works with the Kabbalah's Tome to keep the tempo alive, I think this is going to see a lot of play. Level Up, very much like a Quartermaster card. Not much to say here. I think in certain situations it's better than Quartermaster. In certain situations it's much worse. You can't do sort of Battlecry shenanigans with the Quartermaster, but you can technically get more attack and health with the Level Up. If you have a full board of recruits, you before would have to, with the Quartermaster, you would have had to kill off a 1/1, whereas this you can just plop it down. Maybe at 10 mana you get the Dream, 7 recruits, and you get 35 damage. That's right, yeah, 35 damage all at once. It doesn't have Muster for Battle around, right? Like, if Muster for Battle is around, then this card is again crazy. But because there's no Muster, you have to work harder to make your Level Up very powerful. But it is strong enough to see play for sure. Fightful Summoner, this 6 mana 4/4 says Battlecry, reveal a spell from your deck, summon a random minion with the same cost. So you can definitely warp your deck around it. The first thing that comes to mind is doing the old Call the Wild thing. Just call the wilds in your deck, you reveal a 9-drop every time. You get a 9-drop for free every time. That's kind of cool. I think this fits it in Mage quite well because there's so many high-cost spells. Stuff like Blizzard, Flame Strike, Meteor. Kind of like an upgraded Faceless Summoner. The Faceless Summoner was a 5/5 that revealed a 3-drop. This thing can reveal 6, 7, 8 drops. That's pretty cool. Seeping Oozling, 6 mana 5/4 Hunter card. Battlecry, gain the death rattle of a random minion in your deck. Now, if you only play Savannah Highmane as your death rattle minion, you're going to get another Savannah Highmane. So, kind of crazy how many sort of Savannah Highmanes you can get nowadays between this and Stitch Tracker. In Wild, you got cool things like Sylvanas and Sneed's Old Shredder to get. So, very cool combo card here. It's hard to judge if this will see play in Constructed, but it's definitely a deck builder's dream. So, I'm definitely going to play a lot of this card. I do think it's at the very least a role player. Where do I rate this card? It's pretty hard to judge what people are going to do in the mainstream. The next card is one of the first cards revealed. It's Rin, the First Disciple, 6 mana, 3/6 taunt. Death Rattle, add the first seal to your hand. So what these seals are, they're all 5 mana, and they basically summon demons of increasing power and toughness. Now the first one here, the first seal, 5 mana, 2/2 demon. And then you get the second seal, it becomes you get a 3/3, a 4/4, a 5/5, and a 6/6. And then finally, you get Azari the Devourer, 10 mana, 10/10. Which is not good, by the way. 10 mana, 10/10 is not good. Destroy your opponent's deck. That's a good thing. However, at that point, do they even have a deck left? That's what you got to consider. So, this card is terrible, right? You can live the dream and try to get this done. I mean, maybe if you open it, I mean, I definitely suggest you try to live the dream, but I don't think you would ever want to craft this card, and it's pretty damn bad. It's definitely going to make your deck worse. It's a 0, but the design's pretty cool. The design takes a hit because it's just not realistic in the slightest, and the reward at the end is kind of stupid. So I would have some words for the people that designed this card. I don't think in any world spending 100 mana to play 10 mana 10/10 is worth it. So yeah, kind of silly but cool. But again, not costed correctly at all. Grumble, World Shaker. So coming off the sort of Marabi disaster where we had a 6 mana 4/4, this guy actually has good stats and he's actually an elemental. So, well, they learned their lesson, I guess. Battlecry, return your other minions to your hand. They cost 1. Whoa, that is crazy. So this guy could do some crazy things, and it also combos crazily with Spirit Echoes, right? So if all the things you return cost 1, you can have a crazy turn where you play a bunch of one cost things, Spirit Echoes them all. And maybe even Spirit Echoes the World Shaker to go off again with another Spirit Echo. So it's kind of super value. I can't wait to play this card. Gather your party. This warrior card is 6 mana. It says recruit a minion. So pretty simple. It's going to pull a random minion from your deck into play. You do not get the battle cry. So yeah, very, very safely costed card. When is this good? Maybe when you only have 6 to 10 drops in your deck. And now is your deck... Then the card becomes good. But is your deck good if it only includes 6 to 10 drops? Probably not, but it is something to experiment with. Very cool. The fact that you don't get the battle cry is kind of a bummer. So in wild stuff like Varian Wren doesn't work quite well at all, but very cool card, I guess. I guess this is just we're discussing recruit mechanic here because this is pretty much just recruit. Pretty boring recruit is, pretty random. Cool stories though. Some possibility to build your deck around. Mage legendary Illusionist, 6 mana. At the end of your turn, draw 3 cards. So at the very least, you draw 3 for 6. If this thing hangs around, you're going to keep drawing 3. Now, this is so far the best legendary weapon by a little bit, I think, just because of the low floor and a high ceiling. Right? If you're drawing 3 cards every turn, I would say that's a pretty high ceiling. And the floor of just drawing 3 cards for 6, pretty good. So yeah, this is a good card, and it will definitely see play. Tempora, so the legendary here. Battlecry, your opponent takes 2 turns, then you take 2 turns. This card's not good. It pretty much says Battlecry, you lose the game in most situations against most decks. If you don't lose the game, you're probably going to win the game. That's a bonus. Well, I think it's too bad this wasn't costed. This wasn't bigger, like a 10/10. So if you don't lose the game, then all of a sudden you have a huge 10/10 they have to do. Yeah, I mean it's really hard. A card like Leroy, like you basically just lose to Leroy or Doomguard immediately because they get the charge and then they get the charge again. If Battlecry, your opponent takes 2 turns, doesn't win the game, then you're already winning. And then why are you playing this in the first place, right? So over Vanguard, 7 mana 3/3. This card's very cool. Death Rattle, recruit an 8-cost minion. So unlike some of the other recruit cards, this thing only pulls 8 drops, so you can warp your deck around it. I think it's pretty cool in Paladin right now because you have access to extra 8 drops with the Light Lord and Tyrion. In Wild, you have access to Sneeze Old Shredder, Kel'Thuzad, and Ragnaros, so that's pretty cool. This guy works best, I think, with the cube. If your opponent doesn't want to give you an 8-drop, they're not going to kill this, so you kill it with your cube. You get an 8-drop, and then when your cube dies, you get 2 more 8-drops. In Standard, the 8-drop to watch out for is definitely Charged Devil Sword. It has a clause where you can't attack heroes with the battle cry, whereas with this thing, it's going to come out without a battle cry, so you can immediately go face for that 7/7. That's pretty cool. So watch out for this card. I think exactly in Paladin and doing funny things in a Wild. And it is sort of the most hilarious cube target we got going right now. So this guy's very cool. It's definitely a role player, right? If you design your deck around it, it has a place. Lesser Sapphire Spellstone. So the Shaman one, summon 1 copy of a friendly minion, and if you overload 3, you're gonna get 2 copies, and you overload 3 again, you're gonna get 3 copies. So crazy combo-tastic card here. You're paying a lot for the first sort of step of this. And but when you get to the final step, you're getting kind of a crazy card here. Problem with this card is right now in Shaman, Doppelgangster Evolve kind of pigeonholes you into doing that instead of anything fun. I will be trying this, but again, I think for constructed, if you're looking for serious tier decks, this doesn't make a cut in the slightest. Lesser Mithril Spellstone, kind of an unfortunately statted card here. 7 mana, summon a 1/5/5 Mithril Golem, and then you can upgrade it with weapons, and then you get 2 or 3 golems. I think it's kind of a design fail that the golems are 5/5s and not like 4 6s or 4 7s or 4 8s, something 4 and bigger, right? Because they're golems, they should be tougher, they should have bigger toughness. The fact that they're 5/5 means they die to both Dragonfire and Anduin, even on curve, right? So it's kind of unfortunately designed card there. If you actually get 3 5/5s for 7, that's good. I'm not going to say this is unplayable. Definitely a role player card, but it's just really unfortunately statted, especially in a Dragon Priest world, right? Crushing Walls, this is kind of deadly shot twice. Destroy your opponent's left minion and rightmost minion, so if you can hit exactly 2 giants, that's awesome. Your opponent will know about this card's existence, so they're not going to play into it, I don't think. Maybe this sees so little play that your opponent never plays around it. It's funny that playing Explosive Shot and this in the same deck kind of gets your opponent one way or the other, right? Like with Explosive Shot, you always put the lowest health in the middle, whereas with Crushing Walls, you want to put your big things in the middle. Mare and the Fox was a fun card we got early, and it's not really playable, but it is fun. You definitely should try this card if you haven't already. Everyone gets it for free. Hopefully you got it. And you have to find a way to flip that treasure or kill that treasure before your opponent does something naughty like evolve it or buff it up. So pretty cool design here. I like the design of this a lot. The power level not too great, but can be very powerful in the right situation. King Tog Waggle, Battle Cry, swap decks with your opponent. This 8 mana 5/5 does something very powerful against combo decks, and you sort of hold them ransom. They get a ransom spell, 5 mana to swap back. It's kind of unfortunate that the ransom wasn't steeper. It would have been cool if the ransom was like pay 10. So like if you want your deck back, man, you're gonna have to really pay for it, right? Whereas for 5 mana, this kind of acts like a Lotheb, right? They kind of have to kind of skip their turn to sort of get back, you know, the things they assumably need. The problem with this card is a lot of decks kind of laugh at you when you play it, like a tempo rogue deck. If you ever get to 8 mana, do they really care? If you're the control deck past turn 8 and they start drawing your heavy, powerful cards, you know, they might like it. They might like it better. So yeah, so against combo decks, this is kind of hilarious and awesome. But I think more realistically against the sort of tempo meta, this is kind of silly. Katharina Winter Wisp is an 8 mana 6/6, Battlecry and Death Rattle, recruit a beast. So again, you can warp your deck around this with the Savannah High mains. Maybe you play King Crush, Charles of Swords. So if you play the only big beast deck, this thing is insane and very fun. And it is an 8-drop, so it combos with the Silver Vanguard, but you do lose the Battle Cry on it, right? But still pretty cool. And if you design your deck around it, you can do a lot of fun things, and I can't wait to try this out. Is the deck going to be good enough to see competitive play? It's hard to tell. But Hunter has a lot of tools between Animal Companion and Eaglehorn Bow and the secret synergy cards to sort of make a deck without many sort of beasts in it, right? They already did sort of the Barnes Yasarj thing. This is a pretty good Barnes target as well, right? It's got a huge Death Rattle on it, and if the only beasts in your deck are huge, well, getting this off Barnes is pretty crazy. So definitely very good card. Grizzled Guardian, 8 mana 3/5 taunt. This Druid card has Death Rattle. Recruit 2 minions that cost 4 or less. So again, you don't get 4 drops. You only get 4 or less. So again, you have to really jump through hoops. You get super value out of this card. I think, like Sludge Belcher, it is sort of underrated a little bit. I think overall this is overcosted, but I think you really have to pay attention to any card that acts kind of like a Sludge Belcher, even if it costs 8. This does have the Beast tag, which has some relevance, and If you can get 2 Sengens out of this card or 2 Shredders in Wild, I mean, that's pretty crazy, right? So, and because it has Taunt, your opponent can't ignore it, so you hope they don't have Silence. If this gets silenced, well, that's pretty sad. But if it is better than it looks, and it looks bad. So it's not great because it is still kind of overcosted, but it is better than it looks. Problem he has, I think, at 8 mana, do you want to play this or the Lich King? Like, why warp your deck around this when you can play the Lich King for a huge taunt? So yeah, it's kind of unfortunately costed. Maybe at 7 mana it's pretty cool, but at 8 mana, But again, you gotta watch out for this because it's better than it looks, and it looks bad, right? Grand Archivist. At the end of your turn, cast a spell from your deck. Target's chosen randomly, so that kind of makes you think about what you're actually doing with your deck, which is awesome, right? The first thing that comes to mind probably for everybody is Call the Wild. If you only have Call the Wilds in your deck, you're always going to Call the Wild on turn 8. With this guy, you don't get the charging Huffer, but you do get a ton of stats for 8 mana, probably enough to win the game shortly thereafter. So that's pretty cool. In Priest, you can do things like put Mind Control in your deck. Now the target is chosen randomly, but generally getting a free Mind Control is a good thing. There's also the Free from Amber in Priest, which again, even if you get a random card, it's still pretty strong, right? We're looking at Hunter, we're looking at Priest. I think this finds a home in Mage almost surely because of Kabbalah's Tome, Blizzard, and Flame Strike. Now Meteor is pretty risky because he could get Meteored, so I don't think you can include Meteor, but stuff like Arcane Intelligence, stuff like Kabbalah's Tome, Blizzard, and Flame Strike kind of guarantee this will see a home in a Mage deck for sure. The Rune Spear Shaman Legendary. Don't like this card very much at all. The comparison you make is to Vine Cleaver in Paladin. It costs less, has more attack, and you get the 1/1s every time, and you can sort of build around those 1/1s being recruits. Whereas this thing, discovering helps, no doubt, but it's just too random, right? Now maybe there's enough Call of the Wild kind of things going on and to make this a thing. So, but I'm gonna say it's not good. But who knows? The ceiling is absurd. I think the floor is what holds this card back. The floor is pretty bad. Whereas a card like Vine Cleaver has a very high floor. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of this review. There's going to be 2 more review videos. I'm going to do the next one probably right before the sort of floodgates open and all the cards are released. And then once all the cards are released, the last video will come out with the remaining cards. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for making it to the end of the video, guys. I have links here for more content. And if you would like to see the channel grow, please click that subscribe button in the middle. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.